Hey YouTube, it's your girl Stacy Celeste, and excuse any like outside noise. Hopefully the noise isn't too bad, but I am sitting on my porch outside because the weather is just perfect, and I'll probably regret it because it is allergy season, so I'm already kind of congested from being in two very different climates over a short span of time. Coming from Houston back to Phoenix, I've been just feeling it. Yesterday I felt like I got hit by the magic school bus or something. But anyways, as promised, I wanted to come back on. Y'all see I got my hair did. I didn't get no curls or nothing. I just kind of got it because I was struggling. But anyways, I wanted to come back in and do my March wrap-up, book wrap-up. And yeah, so without further ado, let's just hop right in. If you guys follow me on Instagram, I did do like a reel that had kind of specific points on the books that I've read so far. But hey, if it ain't on YouTube, it ain't real in terms of my book stuff. So first things first, let me get my phone so I can remember what I wrote and what I think. Oh, it's right here. All right, so the first book that I finished this month was Bloodmark, this book 2 in the Legendborn series or Legendborn cycle by Tracy Deonn, and I thoroughly enjoyed reading this book. I think I gave it 4 or 5 stars. I would say more so 4.5 stars. 5 stars for me. I'm still trying to get my ratings together, like what I feel about books and how I can like interpret that in the ratings for the book. But for me, 5 stars is just like mind-blowing. It's just like it's just impeccable. And honestly, this was more of a 4 or 5 star for me because it just was a very beautiful, enjoyable ride. It never, like, as soon as you started to feel like it was getting not even boring, but you were starting to wrap your head around stuff, something else crazy happens. So essentially it's about Bree Matthews, who she attends the University of North Carolina, but she's in like a pre-college program. And in the first book, you know, there's a lot of world building around the fact that, you know, her mother passed away, and she found out that there was a lot more to her mother's story, that her mother had a magical element to her that was not only you know, in her roots, so like her root magic, but also in some connection and lineage to King Arthur's court. Now, I didn't read King Arthur at all, so I've never read King Arthur. This is my first kind of retelling slash story that references King Arthur. So I don't know those similarities, but essentially there's kind of 2 magic systems going on, and one is more rooted in, you know, black, I would say hoodoo, but it's not called hoodoo in here, but I would call it hoodoo in a sense, not in a negative. I think hoodoo gets a negative connotation, but just in a more rooted African spirituality. And then the other part of her has this King Arthur, you know, medieval type of magic system going on, and Bree happens to kind of be a mix of both of those. So hopefully that is a good understanding of what's going on. But I think what I like most about this is that it kind of touches on something that's very real in America, and how, you know, African American people, a lot of us have, you know, white or European ancestors, and sometimes those European ancestors are also people who own slaves, or people who would have been villains in our lives, you know, to us. And so it's almost, how do you reconcile these 2 very contradictory bloodlines, you know? And so it touches on that. There were a couple things in the author's note that I kind of wanted to read. I'll put a spoiler right here because I don't know. I don't want to, like, it's in the author's note, so it's not part of the story, but I definitely wanted to share it with you guys on here. And it says, When Bree hears Vera's declaration that the generations of women between them ran so that you would not have to, and that is the tip of our spear, she internalizes those words as an all-consuming responsibility and applies it broadly to her own life because she cares and their lives matter. This process is familiar to many black women that I know, yet it can be a source of damage. While I believe that black women are magic, we are also human. Though we cannot be our ancestors' every wish, we often feel compelled to try. This too is a manifestation of intergenerational trauma and grief. And I just, like, reading the book, reading that part of the author's note, it just shows you the care with which Tracy Deonn had with developing Bree, and like the messaging that was deeper than just the story. And like, it's just really cool to kind of see how she put that together and how she made that work. There's another piece of this that I wanted to read real quick too, and it's, I sometimes see this struggle portrayed as if forced resilience is strength and harrowing solitude is empowerment, but these images come with high cost. I don't want Bree to be seen as strong to the point of not being cherished. She is allowed to be a teenage girl. She is worthy of being protected regardless of what she can do for others. And so, like, for me, reading that author's note in the back of the book, I read it after I finished reading the book. It kind of brought the book full circle because it allowed me to kind of see the image and the what is the word? The messaging that is rooted in the character of Bree and rooted in aspects of this story. You see a woman who is magical, who is powerful, but who is also protected, you know. And I think that is a piece that is very critical, and especially this being young adult, it's critical for young women, especially young black women, to understand that just because you are powerful, just because you are talented, doesn't mean that you have to face the world by yourself, and it doesn't mean that that you can't expect other people to help you and to support you and to protect you. So I just thought that this was just, you know, she understood the assignment. I actually enjoyed it, and I absolutely recommend this, especially for the audience that it was written for, a young adult audience. All right, y'all can see me starting to, we gonna have to keep this going because I don't know how long I'm gonna last out here. All right, so the next book that I read, I'll have to put it up here because I don't have it, was Black Girls Must Be Magic, which is the second book in the Jane Allen series of books, Black Girls Must Die Exhausted books. And I read the first one. I read Black Girls Must Die Exhausted a little while back, maybe January, I think. January or February. And when I tell you, I did not particularly care for this book. I think I gave it 2 stars. My problems with it are, I think sometimes I don't like titles that are so all-encompassing, especially when, to me, the characters in the story are so narrow, they're so shallow, there's no depth to them, there's not enough depth to them, at least for me. I think the title is kind of misleading because you go into it thinking that you would find a situation or scenarios that you could truly relate to, but I just felt like everything in the book was just very surface level. I know I looked on Goodreads after I read the book, and there was one lady on there that summarized it well, and that she said that the book felt like a book that was written by white women, you know, or it wasn't really written for the black women audience. It was written for other people, and I could kind of see that because even in the reviews, the people who appeared to be white, they really enjoyed the book, but the people that appeared to be black, you know, most of them, not all of them, some of them still enjoyed it, but they appeared to kind of not, it wasn't hitting all the way. And so for me personally, I just felt like the main character, she created situations, like she created things, and then she leaned so heavily on these broader stereotypes and she just got so encapsulated by them. Like she was her oppression, like she was her trauma, she was her things. And I just didn't feel like, as black women, there's more to us than these stereotypical things that happen to us. We deal with it. We deal with, you know, texturism, and we deal with you know, stuff with our relationships, and we deal with all kinds of things and microaggressions and things of that nature, but it doesn't shape everything that we are. Like, who we are is bigger than the things that we face and the oppressions that we face. So I just felt like the book, to me, it just didn't give. It didn't, to me, it was more of a disservice, you know. And I hate to talk bad about books. That's why I didn't really post anything on Instagram about this. I didn't really want to talk and bash the book, but it just was not something that I felt was for me, and I just don't think that it lived up to the title, not only in the second book but also in the first book. I hinted on it before in the last wrap up that I did with that book. I think it was January, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think it was January. Black girls must, like, we don't have to die exhausted. We don't have to be magic. And I just felt like the book just didn't go into it enough. It didn't really, it just brazed over these problems, and, like, you know, none of the people in, like, sorry, I forget the girl's name, but she was annoying. She was so annoying. Look, let me know what you guys think if you read this story. For me, it was a no. It was a hard no. I think I gave it 2 stars. And yeah, it just, to me, did a disservice. Like, it didn't really help. It kind of hurt in a sense. And, you know, it's not a slight to the author, you know, it's a major accomplishment to write a book, but I just thought it was very gimmicky, and yeah, I wasn't here for it. Alright, so the next book I read, I won't touch too much on it. It's Home Fire by Camilla Shamsi, and I talked a lot more about this in one of my reading vlogs, so I don't want to spend too much time on it here, but I ended up, I think, giving this 4 stars. It is a retelling of the story Antigone by Sophocles, and it is essentially, this story is about a family who lives in London, whose father, you know, 3 siblings, so 2 siblings are twins, and the oldest is a girl named Isma, and it chronicles the story of these British Muslim people. I think they're Pakistani Muslim people that live in England, and who their father was indoctrinated into, like, the jihadist group, and he fought for, like, a jihadist Islamic terrorist group. And it also, the son gets indoctrinated into that group as well. What I really loved about this book is that it gave a very humanistic approach to how easily it is to get involved in some of these terrorist organizations, especially when the climate politically, and, like, the experiences that you have as a person of color or a person who is Muslim religion, the experiences that you have are such that it's like, yeah, the world is against me, especially if you're in a Western society being a Muslim person. And, you know, it's easy to get caught up in that space, into more of a radical space, because you see what's going on, and you see some of the injustices that you are having to experience on a day-to-day basis. This is, like, my first kind of story about, like, like an Islam story of, like, a family who is in Islam. And it is also a lot about identity and being able to maintain your identity in these Western societies. And so I really enjoyed it. I thought that it was, like, the perfect length. I thought that the retelling of Antigone was such a unique retelling. I learned some things in this book, and I definitely got more interested from reading this book, more interested in learning a little bit more about you know, people of Islamic faith who live in these Western societies, and how what their plight is, and some of the things that they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, it just got me, I'm just definitely happy that I read this book overall. So yeah, I won't spend too much more time on this one. If you want to know more about my thoughts here, just go to the reading vlog that I did with Home Fire. Okay, so the next book that I read this month was You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaki Amizi, and this is also one that I have in a reading vlog, so if you want to know a little bit more about what I felt about this book, tune into that reading vlog. Essentially, I think I gave this 4 stars. Did I say 4 or 5? Yeah, I gave it 4 stars, and when I first started listening to it, I'm like, okay, I don't know if I'm gonna like this book. There's a lot of sexual fluidity. So when I say that, I mean there's, you know, we talk about modesty and things like that, and, like, oh, there's a way that is not really there. It's the women in this book are really expressing themselves sexually very fluidly, and for some people that may feel uncomfortable. It shouldn't necessarily, but it may feel uncomfortable. And I kind of felt like at the beginning, I'm like, okay, this is a lot. But as I continued to read, I really got engaged to the characters and the story itself. It was actually a pretty fun story, but at the same time, there was a deep trauma there. The main character lost her husband tragically, and she's just trying to figure out and navigate life without him, and love without him, finding new love without him, and how does she feel again, you know, because it's one thing to have sex, but there's another thing to actually feel and be open enough to actually be vulnerable enough to be in relationship again. So that's kind of what it was about. I talked extensively in my blog about relationships and boundaries in relationships, and her relationship that she ended up getting into. So like I said, if you want to know more about my thoughts there, just check out my blog that I did with that book. And yeah, I ended up giving that 4 stars, and yeah, honestly, I recommend it. I do also understand that that's a book that is not going to be for everybody. Some people are going to pick that up and be like, oh, what the heck is this? What is it? But like, I could actually see beyond it, and really I thought it was a bold interpretation of, you know, grief and trauma, and it was captivating. So definitely enjoyed reading that. The next book that I read, I've been teeter-tottering on 4 or 5 stars on this book, and that is The Secret Life of Church Ladies by Disha Filial. And reason why I think I like this book, I did talk about it a little bit in my last reading vlog that I did, because I forgot to talk about it in the prior reading vlog. But this book, I think the reason why I really liked it is that I grew up in a church environment. I went to church with my mom. My dad never went to church, but my mom went to church. And so growing up, I would go to church and then afterwards go get dinner with my family. That was kind of our Sunday thing that we did when I was younger. And so I saw a lot of things. Like when you go to church, you see a lot of things. You hear things, you see things, and sometimes it's hard to reconcile certain things. And then you go home and you see things. So you see people that go to church every day and act crazy. So you see you have to kind of reconcile what you're hearing in church and what you're seeing. And I think that this book, it had a lot. It's a book of short stories, and like the short stories expressed so many different types of women, the lives and the depths of the women in the stories, and just their experiences, and over the backdrop, like in the backdrop of Christianity, in the backdrop beyond Christianity of church, and what that means, and the pastor and the preacher and and like all those things, you know. So you hit on sexuality, you hit on you know, patriarchy, and you hit on a lot of different things by just learning about these different women. And I thought the author just did a really good job of just telling these stories just so authentically, so real. And there was, you could take things from it, but it wasn't so explicit and blatant, the points that the author was trying to make. You could easily read a story and one person could feel one way about it, and another person could feel a totally different way about it. And I love that. I love that so much. I feel like I would definitely read other books by this author. And it was sweet. I listened to it on audiobook. Definitely will probably pick that up as well. Alright, so the last book that I read this month, or last month in March, was Olga Dais Dreaming by, y'all, I know I should know how to say this lady name, because I don't think it's as hard as it looks, but it's by Yoshita. Y'all, let me know, how do I pronounce this name? Gonzalez. And I also talked about this book a lot in one of my previous vlogs. I adored it. I adored the characters in this story. I adored the backdrop, the environment of the story. I enjoyed the uniqueness of the story. And this is also another story that's kind of similar to Home Fire, in that I haven't culturally read a lot about Puerto Rican culture, and it kind of dove into a lot of obviously the similarities of being, you know, an Afro-Caribbean or being African American. There are some similarities there, but then there's also a lot of differences there, and there's a lot of history there that I just haven't touched on, and this book kind of touched on it for me. But it definitely inspires me to dig a little bit deeper, especially being that Puerto Rico is a part of the United States technically, but they still don't have all the rights that we have that we have on the mainland. It's still a little different. So all of that I still don't know a lot about. I'll be honest with you, I'm a little bit ignorant of, but I loved what the author did here. I love the structure of the book. I read this on my Kindle, so I love the structure of the book. I love the characters in the book. I love the creativity in the book. I felt like Olga, I loved Olga. I loved her brother Prieto. Even their mother, to me, she came off as very wise, but just very like tunnel vision on her things that she wanted to solve. And so I think at the end of the book, she definitely was a villain in the end of the book, but I definitely could also understand there is a lot that a person has to sacrifice to be a revolutionary on that level. And sometimes it's your family, sometimes it's your kids. And so I think it's kind of a catch-22 in a sense. And yeah, I definitely just enjoyed, this was a book that I just honestly enjoyed reading. And why else do you read? Why else do you read? So there is that. Really quickly, for April so far, today is April 8th. I think it's the 8th. Yeah, today is April 8th, and so far I've finished reading Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I will tell you guys a lot more about that in the April wrap up, but I think I gave it 3.5 to 4 stars. I definitely enjoyed it, but I think that if I was a gamer, if I was somebody into that space, I think I would appreciate some of the nuances in it a little bit more. Even though I did enjoy most of the characters, Sadie got on my nerves so bad. But yeah, we'll talk about that in the end of the month. The book that I'm reading right now, I'm actually really enjoying so far. I'm very, very early in the book. I don't even think I'm 100 pages into it. But that is Babel by R.F. Kuang. If you had saw my, what is it called? One of my most recent blog, you will see that I purchased this while I was in Houston. I wasn't supposed to buy any books, but I ended up buying this, and it was actually a good buy because I did read it on my plane ride back to Phoenix. And so Babel is so far really, really good. It's like up my alley. It's more of a dark academia, and so far the characters are really giving for me, and I'm very interested to see how it develops. Like I said, I'm not even 100 pages into this book, but this will be the only book that I'm reading right now. So hopefully I can finish it by the end of the week. All right, so with that being said, that is all I have for this month's of March reading wrap up. What books did you guys read in March? Let me know in the comments below. Did you like them? Have you read any of the books that I talked about? What did you think? All those things. I'm curious. So yes, until the next time, peace out. Bye guys.